Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's midnight now here in Cairo, and this is a new edition of Panorama News. In the upcoming 45 minutes, we'll be bringing you the latest of the political, economic and sports news from all around the world. I'm Henny Saif. I'll be your host for tonight, and we'll start off with the political news, and these are the headlines. President Sisi calls for adopting good investment plan. The Arab League foreign ministers convene in Cairo. Iraqi forces recapture Mosul government buildings and museum. Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stressed on Tuesday on the significance of preparing a good investment plan which should include diversified investment opportunities in order to achieve targets of the sustainable development. During separate meetings with Minister of Investment and International Cooperation Sahar Nasr and Minister of Finance Amr Garhi in the attendance of Prime Minister Sharif Ismail, President al-Sisi also gave his directives to control prices, decrease inflation and minimize expenditures.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stressed on Tuesday the significance of a good and precise preparation for the investment plan of the country. During a meeting with Prime Minister Sharif Ismail and Minister of Investment and International Cooperation Sahar Nasr in Cairo, President al-Sisi said the investment plan should increase diversified investment opportunities in order to achieve targets of the sustainable development. The President gave his directives to benefit from available investment chances in every governorate, in addition to determining sectors which necessitate development as well as demands of promotion. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Ala Youssef said Minister Nasser presented her ministry's plan in the coming stage within the framework of the ongoing economic reform program to promote the national economy. The minister stressed the importance of increasing and attracting foreign investments in addition to continuing cooperation with international financial institutions to achieve the sustainable development. In this respect, Minister Nasr referred to her participation in the 13th session of the Investment Conference in the United Arab Emirates and her meetings there with Emirati, Arab and foreign businessmen who expressed their desire to increase their investments in Egypt. Also on Tuesday, President al-Sisi held another meeting with the Premier and Minister of Finance, Amr Garhi, during which he gave his directives to control prices, decrease inflation, and minimize expenditures. The meeting tackled the financial performance of the government during the first half of the fiscal year 2016-2017. Garhi said his ministry was exerting its efforts to decrease inflation through activating the role played by monitoring apparatus and confronting monopoly practices. He noted that the budget of the fiscal year 2017-2018 is expected to exceed £1 trillion with a budget deficit of less than 10%.
Arab League foreign ministers convened in Cairo on Tuesday. During their 147th regular round, the ministers discussed the Israel-Palestinians issue and the ongoing conflict. The situation in Yemen, Iraq and Libya, as well as efforts to combat terrorism, also topped the agenda of their talks. The ministers reviewed joint Arab action in the political, economic and social fields, in addition to Iranian and Turkish intervention in the internal affairs of Arab states, Arab ties with regional blocs, as well as preparing the draft schedule for the upcoming Arab summit in Jordan. Arab League Secretary General Ahmed Abul-Ghait told the meeting that the Syrian conflict remained a bleeding wound in the heart of Arab nations. Abul-Ghait described the recent ceasefire agreed in Astana as a positive step. On the Palestinian cause, United Nations Peace Process Chief Nikolai Maldenov told delegates that Israel must show commitment to a two-state solution, while the Palestinians must continue state building and tackling the challenge of violence. On the side of the Arab League ministerial meeting, Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry met with his Armeni counterpart Yusuf Tuesday, during which they discussed vital issues which will be tackled in the Arab summit that will take place in Jordan. The two ministers reviewed the outcome of Shoukry's latest visit to Washington and Brussels, especially regarding the crises in Yemen and Syria, in addition to the in Libya and Ben Alawi stress on the settlements in solving the region's crises in order to safeguard the unity and sovereignty of Arab nations, as well as people's resources. The two top diplomats also stress on the importance of a coordination with the new U.S. administration under Donald Trump, as well as other active regional and international powers, to reach a peaceful and just settlement for the Palestinian cause based on a two-state solution that preserves the Palestinian people its legitimate rights. They called on maintaining an Arab solidarity in the face which aim to destabilize Arab countries. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ahmed Abu Zaid said the Armenian minister confirmed during the meeting that the Egyptian-Armenian relations represent a fundamental cornerstone in the Arab region, which emerged from a historical dimension and deep bilateral ties in various domains. For his part, Shokri said the Egyptian-Armenian ties are deeply rooted, adding that Egypt is keen on boosting those ties for the sake of the two nations' interests. Also, Shokri met with the Algerian Minister of Moroccan Affairs, African Union and Arab League, Abdelkader Musahil, during which they discussed means of boosting bilateral ties. They also reviewed a number of regional files, including the situation in Libya, Syria and Yemen. Upon the directives of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Egypt opened the Rafah border crossing on both sides on Tuesday. The crossing will remain open on Wednesday for a third consecutive day to allow humanitarian cases and students to pass through. The top generals from Turkey, the United States and Russia met Tuesday to discuss tensions in northern Syria, where mutually suspicious forces allied with the three countries are fighting the Daesh terrorist group. Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim said Turkey, the United States and Russia must coordinate fully to clear Syria of terrorist groups, and the three countries' chiefs of staff were working to prevent clashes among different parties in the country. The talks announced by Turkey come amid rising tensions in northern Syria, where Turkish troops and allied Syrian fighters, US-backed Kurdish-led forces and Russian-allied Syrian troops are fighting their way towards the Daesh group's de facto capital, Raqqa. On the ground, Syria's army and its allies took control of the main water pumping station for Aleppo at Al-Khafsa near the Euphrates on Tuesday after Daesh militants withdrew.
A group that monitors the conflict in Syria said on Tuesday that the Syrian army and its allies have captured the main water pumping station that supplies Aleppo in a sweeping advance against Daesh that has brought them to the bank of the Euphrates. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the army and allied forces made rapid gains east of Aleppo City as Syrian and Russian planes pounded the rural areas. They recaptured the Al-Hafsa area on the western bank of the river, where the water treatment and plumbing parts and plants are located, after the terrorist group withdrew. The Syrian military source had said earlier on Tuesday the army had advanced to areas very close to both. Aleppo's main water supply has been cut off for nearly 2 months, and the city's residents now rely mainly on ground wells or water purchased from private vendors. A military media unit run by Hezbollah, a Lebanese ally which is fighting alongside President Bashar al-Assad government forces, also quoted a source as saying the army had advanced and regained the area. Daesh is losing ground in northern Syria to 3 separatist campaigns by the Russian-backed Syrian army, the US-backed Syrian militants, and by Turkey and allied Syrian rebel groups.
US-backed Iraqi forces fighting to drive Daesh from western Mosul on Tuesday recaptured the main government building, the central bank branch, and the museum where 3 years ago Daesh terrorists had smashed statues and artifacts. The troops hoisted an Iraqi flag on the complex of buildings in the Dawasa neighborhood earlier in the morning, hailing the federal police units who stormed the compound as heroes. Hours after announcing the advance, Iraqi Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi visited the troops in Mosul. Al-Abadi called upon Mosul residents to cooperate with the security forces, vowing to rebuild their city and restore services. Meanwhile, the United Nations said that by Sunday it had registered that about 42,000 people fled their homes in western Mosul since the start of the operation last month. Residents of eastern Mosul continue to suffer a lack of basic necessities. Moving on to Yemen, 2 Yemeni boys were killed in a drone strike while walking on a road in central Yemen used by Al-Qaeda militants who have been subject to repeated strikes by U.S. forces in recent days. The 2 brothers, both under 15, were killed on the road used by militants in Yakla, an area in Al-Bayda province where Al-Qaeda is known to operate. The area was the scene of a U.S. commando raid in January against Al-Qaeda in which 1 serviceman and about 30 Yemenis, including women and children, were killed. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres on Tuesday urged the international community to take action to avert famine in Somalia, where a biting drought has left 3 million people going hungry. Guterres told a news conference in Mogadishu that if countries want to fight terrorism, they need to address the root causes of terrorism and bring peace and stability to a country like Somalia. She added that all countries need massive support from the international community to avoid a repetition of the tragic events of 2011. Earlier, the UN official met with Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed, who said his country has a drought which could result in a famine if it does not receive any rain in the coming 2 months. East Libyan forces carried out a 5th day of airstrikes on Tuesday against a rival faction that overran the major oil ports of Sidra and Ras Lanuf. The eastern-based Libyan National Army and the Benghazi Defense Brigades have been battling for control in Libya's eastern oil crescent since Friday, threatening production from oil ports that the LNA seized in September. A senior official from Libya's National Oil Corporation said that production had dipped by 35,000 barrels a day due to the latest unrest, leaving national production at just over 660,000 barrels a day. LNA spokesman Ahmed al-Mismari said the latest strikes had hit targets from the Benghazi Defense Brigades at Ras Lanuf and Noefiliya, 75 kilometers to the west. U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday backed a draft Republican proposal to dismantle Obamacare that was unveiled on Monday, saying the proposed healthcare legislation was out for review and negotiation.
American President Donald Trump on Tuesday endorsed a plan by Republican U.S. lawmakers to replace the Obamacare healthcare law, but influential conservative groups came out strongly against it, complicating the proposal's prospects for passage in Congress. Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives unveiled legislation to do away with Obamacare, eliminating the requirement that most Americans obtain medical insurance and creating a system of tax credits to coax people into purchase private insurance on the open market. Trump said the draft bill was open to negotiation, adding that he was working on a system to cut drug prices. The lawmakers' plan is a key step towards carrying out pledges by Trump and congressional Republicans to dismantle Obamacare, Democratic former President Barack Obama's signature domestic policy achievement. But lawmakers face pressure from constituents not to throw America's healthcare system into chaos. One Republican senator dubbed it Obamacare Life, with Democrats already lined up in opposition to the proposal. Influential conservative groups, including Heritage Action for America and the Club for Growth, also came out forcefully against it.
Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and Serbian Prime Minister Alexander Vučić agreed on Tuesday to work towards finding a collective solution to the European migrant crisis.
Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and Serbian Prime Minister Alexander Vučić held talks on Tuesday in the Serb capital Belgrade. Both leaders agreed to work towards finding a collective solution to the European migrant crisis. Meanwhile, the International Organization for Migration and the UN Refugee Agency said they remain committed to working with the U.S. administration to ensure the safe and secure resettlement of refugees under established immigration program. The comments follow the executive order on migration by U.S. President Donald Trump to hold the Syrian refugee program and temporarily suspend immigration from 7 Muslim-majority countries. Thousands have demonstrated at U.S. airports since Trump issued an order blocking people from 7 countries in the Middle East and Africa from entering the U.S. and suspending refugee immigrations for 4 months. In the meantime, Hungary's parliament on Tuesday approved the automatic detention of all asylum seekers in container camps at the borders, sparking deep concern at the UN Refugee Agency. According to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, the legislation approved by a large majority of lawmakers is in response to recent terror attacks in Europe carried out by migrants. Speaking at a swearing-in of the latest contingent of some 450 new border police in Budapest, Orban called immigration the Trojan horse of terrorism. Under the new measures, all asylum seekers entering Hungary, as well as those currently in the country, will be confined in the container camps while their applications are processed. Migrants whose applications are rejected may have to cover the costs of their own detention.
North Korea barred Malaysians from leaving the country on Tuesday, sparking tit-for-tat action by Malaysia as police investigating the murder of King Jong-nam in Kuala Lumpur sought to question 3 men hiding in the North Korean embassy. Malaysia's Prime Minister Najib Razak accused North Korea of effectively holding its citizens hostage and held an emergency meeting of its National Security Council. The extraordinary tit-for-tat moves came as the reclusive North faced growing international condemnation for a volley of missiles it fired into the Sea of Japan. The developments marked a dramatic heightening of tensions with Malaysia 3 weeks after the half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was murdered at Malaysia's main airport with a banned nerve agent. Seoul has blamed Pyongyang for the assassination, and Kuala Lumpur wants to question several North Koreans. Thousands were fleeing a Myanmar town bordering China on Tuesday after at least 30 people were killed in fighting between the army and ethnic rebels as Beijing called for an immediate ceasefire between the two sides. The violence is some of the most intense to rattle the Chinese-speaking Kokang region since clashes in 2015 left scores dead and forced tens of thousands to flee into China. The area is in northeastern Shan state, which has seen repeated bouts of heavy fighting between the army and a band of well-armed ethnic minority militias since November, undercutting a government peace bid.